Today's Real Talk, today'srealtalk.com, Justin Kazepis, 844-STUDIO-4, 844-STUDIO-4. We've got the questions in for today that we're going to be able to answer. If you want to shoot us a message, info@today'srealtalk.com. Even if we don't get to your question today, next episode we will try to get to it, info@today'srealtalk.com. So we picked out a couple here that we've got in line. What is a good deal in real estate? Ooh, so assuming you're talking about the numbers, what is a good deal in real estate? I wish that there was a simplistic answer to that. Man, if we had a couple hours, we sat down with some mojitos and probably some barbecue, we'd be able to talk about that in depth. But what is a good deal? I'll tell you, on average right now, what we see, if you invest into a real estate syndication or an investment fund, you're probably seeing somewhere between 6 and 7% return. And it's funny because a lot of people will say, well, Justin, that doesn't seem like a lot. I get advertisements all the time for, 15, 20, 25%. But there's a lot of risk, right? So when you see those at extremely high returns, that likely is an extremely risky situation or asset or project to invest in. You got to remember, like what we talked about in the beginning of the show, real estate is a low-risk asset because of the demand for it. So keep that in mind. What is a good deal? And a lot of it is going to depend. Are you wanting cash now? Are you wanting to have an equity multiple, like you believe an area is just going to boom in the next 5 years and you think that you can triple the price? Right? So there's a lot of things like that you got to consider. But anybody selling you more than, let's say, 6 to 7% preferred returns, then I would be weary and I would be extremely cautious. And I definitely would have somebody else who is not connected and didn't find that project to look into it and analyze it alongside of you. So just keep that in mind. Some things that are too good to be true, that seem too good to be true, they are too good to be true. I learned that one the hard way a few times. Do you think rents will go up or down over the next couple of years? Wow, crystal ball time today. Do I think rents will go up or down over the next couple of years? It's so market specific. If I look at North Carolina as a whole right now, I would say, generally speaking, if there was a way to dollar cost average across the board in the state of North Carolina, I think they go up. How high they go up and how fast do they continue to rise becomes the question. So in a normal market where you don't have inflation out of control and you're not having to include certain aspects to balance the market back out, let's say a typical average market has a 3% increase in rents on average. I think that will continue because of how low the supply is. Now, again, at what rate it will increase, I don't know. That is going to be very market specific, where I think some you'll have 5% increases on average. I think some you may continue to see 10, 15, 20%. If the demand for a particular area coupled with low supply continues. This conversation leads to a different one of, okay, how many units becomes enough to normalize the market? And again, that's going to be market specific based on the demand. If jobs continue to pour into North Carolina, which I certainly hope they do, I certainly hope that our state leaders, our local leaders and local municipalities continue to make good decisions to attract businesses to come in, then I think we need a lot more units than we're anticipating. But where I'm beginning to be cautious is new development of multifamily units. I don't think we've reached a critical mass level of number of units because, again, population is continuing to increase. However, rents are becoming so expensive in particular markets that I do think, laterally speaking, you will see the radius begin to grow of where people are willing to live in order to afford living in particular areas. And when that residential, I don't want to call it an exodus because they're still in North Carolina, they're still relatively close to those particular centralized locations. Let's put the two on that are on top in North Carolina, Charlotte and Raleigh. And no, I'm not putting that in any particular order. There's different stats for each market that depending on how you look at it. As people continue to or consider moving farther away from those central points where they work, you will see residential begin to uptick, and closely followed or potentially up front, more commercial then begins to uptick. So generally speaking, the short answer to my long and belabored point is yes, I do think rents will continue to go up. The interesting part is, when will interest rates balance out? And it may happen tomorrow for all I know. That is what is, in my opinion, creating a larger disparagement between homeowners, those who are homeowners and those who are not. Because if interest rates continue to rise, and let's say you're a cash buyer, you don't care what the interest rate is because you're buying a property in cash and you have no debt on it, so it doesn't matter to you what the interest rate is. That's not true for a vast majority of people in our country. Most people have to get a mortgage in order to purchase a property. And if you do, you care very much what those interest rates are. And if the cost to borrow money, right, the expense of borrowing money goes higher and higher and higher, then what that does is it takes you out of the possibility of being able to purchase a home yourself. Thus, you continue renting. And the more people that continue renting, the higher the demand for renting becomes and continues to grow. If there is an inadequate supply, right, a greater demand than the supply that's available, prices will continue to rise. How did you get started in real estate? Wow. Okay. Crystal ball now, personal. How I got started in real estate. So I grew up in real estate. My dad was in real estate as a real estate broker and also a mortgage lender. Began in the 80s in California. And then my family moved here to North Carolina when I was very, very young. So North Carolina is home for me. And I've always been in real estate from the brokerage side. I got my real estate broker license in 2012, became an attorney in 2015, and began doing some purchasing and being in single-family residences. I liked rentals. I really like, at this point, I really like dirt. Again, God's not making any more. So I kind of put dirt similar to water, right? We kind of have to have it. So I've been a broker, mostly representing buyers and sellers, and then switched to being a closing attorney when I started my own firm in 2015, sold that firm in 2021, and pretty much exclusively focusing on real estate development at this point, in addition to some other commercial legal aspects that non-related to residential or closings. But yeah, keeping a pulse on it from a legal perspective, but definitely still on the development side, and got started through my family. So multi-generational wealth is what real estate creates, historically speaking, and I hope to continue that for my family. And if it's something you're interested in, happy to answer the questions we can. 844-STUDIO-4. Justin Kazepis, today's Real Talk. Thanks for joining us. We look forward to seeing you next time.